So this winter, I got onto a massive project that I've been meaning to do for a few years, and that was to transform that rickety old unsafe shed that we had in the garden. And I wanted to turn that shed into something beautiful, something that was practical, safe, and had a myriad of uses, and I believe I did that. And in the last video, you guys told me that after having a quick look at it, you wanted to see that build process. Now, I'm gonna give you a heads up. I never filmed this video with an insight to making a full-length video out of it. So many of you wanted to see that I've decided to put this video together, and it wasn't filmed with this intention in mind. It was filmed for little clips on social media. So I've had to do some voiceover and do a bit of time-lapse because there was so much footage, and it isn't really like any of my other videos, so this is going to be a one-off for you guys that really want to see it. But I think you'll agree that the transformation from what was there to what it is now is nothing but extraordinary. I'm Tony O'Neill, this is Simplified Gardening. Let's get on to it. So I've taken all the shelving out that was like this on this side. As you can see, this whole wall is built with just old windows that are all broken. So I smashed a hole, which is an old door out there. That wall's coming out. We're going to put a new door in there. This is all coming out, and we'll put a new door in there. We're going to build a new wall along here, and then this will be a usable shed. But at the moment, we've smashed this out so that we can get in and out and make things easier for taking that lot to the other tunnel for the moment. But you can see just how jam-packed full of crap this shed was. But we're going to make this into a usable shed as well. That will be handy rather than it being all crappy like that. There's a few leaks on the roof that we need to sort out. New wall up here, new wall up along the back there, and then two new end walls. I know technically we're building a new shed, but we'll leave this one in situ because of all the cold frames behind it, and it's leaning, as you can see here. There's a huge lean on it, so we'll just put a nice new wall just in front of it, and that will be straight. And then this whole wall will come out, and it will also enclose the end of the cold frames and the end of the storage area there, so it'll just be one big wall put in here with a big double door in. So let's crack on. But look at the lean on that, crazy. Like I said, we're gonna cover that wall. I may cover this wall as well because half of it is windows. I'm not sure yet, we'll see. And we've ripped out the two sides where I want to replace. I will take out that top out of there eventually as well. But we've got to replace this, it's all rotten. Pull out these panels here, and then we can take that right across new wall, and we'll have this usable space then in here that we can do something with. So we've taken off the top rail here now, just clearing out the bottom, and literally we've just trimmed out any of the rot and stuff that's in this. And what we'll do is we will build a new framework in that wall, and also build a new frame in this wall to make it nice and level. So just here, what we're doing is building a frame that we can just sit up, and this is made from 2x3 material. Now I want to point out that we are building this square, and we're making sure it's square, but this building is far from square, so we have a few issues standing it up and attaching this wall, as you will see very shortly. But essentially we just built it on the deck, and we lifted this up so that we were able to make it easier, because again, like I said, this shed was far from square. So what we did here was, if you notice, the wall was so far out, we had to start putting blocking in place. We removed a few nails that were sticking out and then had to put blocking in place. We got it level, but again, this is where we found out that this back wall also was leaning and the whole thing was absolutely on the slant. So what I'm doing here is cutting out all of the screws with a recip saw that was holding this wall to the roof, effectively making the wall just loose. And we are trying to push this wall upright here, and that's what we're doing, because this wall was also leaning quite a bit. So if you notice very slightly, the roof is moving as we're doing it, because it's altering the pitch of the roof when it's stood back up. And we had to be quite careful, because both these walls were only made from literally a couple of frames of old windows and a couple of pieces of timber in between them, which weren't the best in the first place. So we forced a lot of these walls back into position, and some of them moved probably about 6 or 7 inches. We had to force the roof up here to allow us to push the wall back, but it didn't manage to get it back as far as we needed to at that point. But we got there. We're just screwing this into the joists now to re-secure it. This did cause us a bit of an issue in the center, where, as you can see, we were struggling in the center here. So with this back wall, I'm now starting to build the wall here. I'm on my own again today, and because of the size of the wall and the angles that this whole building was built at, it was impossible to just build a wall, because the floor wasn't square, the walls weren't square, the ceiling wasn't square. So it was impossible to just build a wall and stand it up in there, and I didn't have the space either. So I had to build this one in situ, piece at a time, and it was needed. Every single piece was a different size. Okay, excuse me shaking you around, but you can see now how bad the glass is here. But look how much this wall is out. Now you can see it, that I've actually put all the way from the bottom there, look. All the way up there. So this wall is way out. So I've literally rebuilt another internal wall now inside this, and that'll just be hidden basically in the wall, so it's out of the way. And then we have a nice straight wall here, which will support this much stronger anyway, and we'll still be able to use everything as it is without having to take it down. We've straightened this wall up so it's much straighter. We will ply this off, but at the moment we're going to sort out a big bow here, and this is all just cobbled together windows and stuff with bits of timber. So we've got to have a look at how we can push that out. So we may put a jack or something on that, push it out, and get it as level as possible. But onwards and upwards, we still got all this side to do. This is where the door will go, but as you can see, it's a nice strong wall now. Excuse me shaking you around like that. Okay, so as you can see, it's not perfect, but we've straightened this wall up and we're able to ply it off now. We've put a load of filler in, cut out a load of rot, and took out some of the old windows that were broken, and this can now be plied off. Now it's not a perfect wall by any means, but it's relatively upright now, so we can at least clad that one off. This wall has also been done. We've put the door in, and that's all working really well, so I'll have to do a bit of filler around the door where I've packed it. We've got framing around there to do now next, and then it's just a case of ply, and I think then we'll be in a position where this will be tidy. I do have to sort out some leaking along this roof. As you can see, the floor's all wet, but that'll make this a pretty good space for storage or whatever we want to put in here. and we've got a double glazed grey door as well there. But we're coming together slowly, and considering how much this was leaning, I mean, you can see just how much the top of that is out, you know. But we've left this wall because that's being supported by all the cold frames and the pergola and everything, so it's not going to go anywhere. And now it's also tied in with blocking to this wall as well, so it's not going to go anywhere. It'll just be hidden in the actual building itself. And then we have like a relatively square, safe building that we can come into. So we've got the 3 walls done for the shed. At least now we can be used as a shed. We just got that one to board, but for now we put in plastic on the wall because we've got a lot of rain coming in this week, so that'll be the end of this project for a couple of days, I should imagine. And then but it'll be a usable storage space then, rather than it being an unsafe structure. And I just got to get the roof sorted, but at least we got something that we can utilize here rather than it being wasted. So that's the internal walls done. I just got to finish the external, and the door is now on that end, so there's no windows or anything in here. And I might put a new roof on this yet, I don't know. But we managed to get the walls pretty square, and it'll be a good usable space now for storage and seed starting or whatever I want to do in here. We'll build some shelves, that'll last. But we have good solid walls, and this structure will go on now rather than having to be torn down. Okay folks, before we actually finish this video off and you get to see the finished results, I just want to interrupt this and show you that my new book, Simplify Vegetable Gardening, will be out in the next 5 days on the 28th of February. And in the book, we talk about this very shed here. So we go through all sorts of things within this book about structures, about growing, about why it's important, all of the things that you need to be a successful gardener. This book's available for pre-order now at the link below. Right, excuse me shaking guys, I'm trying to steady the best I can. So we've boarded that side. Now it's time to board all of this, which is the end of the cold frames, which I'm using as a dumping ground at the moment. That leaning wall and that, and then that'll strengthen and tidy this wall up. So what I'm doing here, I'm just starting to play the outside part of the wall. This is the back wall where the door used to be, and I'm using reclaimed plywood here for this. It's 18mm ply, and it's been used before, but we're just screwing some of this in so that we can get some strength back in this shed, and it's all going to be covered anyway. But I had a few issues here because the sill plate actually dropped below the floor line, so I had to put the screws in at a slight angle. So this side at the moment is a bit of a patchwork quilt. I'm having to make it up with just the pieces I've got left over, but it's no problem. We're picking up the joists, and we'll have a solid wall afterwards, and it's going to be covered anyway, so you're not going to see it. So I've just got across here and up around this little bit here left to do, and that's the wall complete then. But I didn't want to fork out another 120 quid on plywood. All this ply is recycled, so it's been used before, and so it's not cost me anything, and I don't want to be spending out money that I don't need to. That's this whole wall now done. I just got a bit of trimming to do here, and like I said, it's a patchwork quilt, trying to not have to buy another sheet, but the whole wall is nice and strong. So just felting next, and then we're sorted. So here we are using some roofing felt, and we're starting at the bottom so that each layer overlaps. And what I will say with this stuff is, if you're going to use it, be careful with it. It rips very easily. It's very difficult to do on your own, so I do end up with a few wrinkles in this, because we're using, I think this was something like 18 foot long, so it's a fair old piece of felt that you're nailing on, and but you do need to take your time, keep it tight as you can. And it didn't help that this first piece was going against a floor that was slightly sloping, so as you can see, I'm having to trim it off. Here we're folding it around the sides just so that it keeps it tidy, and then we put some timbers on. But as you can see, it looks good. And here you can see me up on the roof. Now I decided to change the roof due to all the holes that was in this plastic sheeting. It looks like cement board here, but it's not. It's actually like fiberglass. And the screws that were used were absolutely rusted to death and back. I'm having to put a ladder on there because the roof themselves was built in all awkward things. Here you saw me working out, because I had two separate roofs, and to bring them up to the same level I had to do that, and I had to build those areas up. Here is the framework for the first set of shelving, which will be for the plant trays, and we're just playing these off. Now with hindsight, I wouldn't have put these outer legs on by putting the timber, before putting the ply on. And you see in a moment that it was so tight in the top, I could have trimmed it down, but I didn't want to. So we had to hammer that in, and you'll see that now in a moment. Here I'm just using a jigsaw to cut out the notches for the timbers so that this goes right back to the wall. I didn't want any gaps where things can fall behind and drop to the next shelf, so we cut out all of these timbers. And this is where you'll see I had a few issues. Firstly, I had to lift the ply over the tops because of the width of it, but we got it in there eventually. And but because of the shape of this wall, if you remember, this back wall wasn't square tall, we had to stand it up, and the timber was cut square, so we had to basically force the wall to go square. And I did that by basically hammering it with a block and a hammer. And here we go, Bob will fix it, and in it goes. And here I'm just hitting the edge of the ply to knock it back into the gaps, because the wall just isn't square. It's not a square corner, but it is going in. As you can see, it's dropping with every hit of the hammer. The worst case with doing something like this, if you don't know there's a gap there, is that you would blow out the OSB 3 plyboard, but I knew there was a gap there for it to go into. We just needed to force it down square. And as you can see, we get there in the end. few screws in now just to hold it all down, and these shelves that the plants will be on are done. As you can see here, I've done the framework on the back wall in order to build these, and I'm going to build these ones because they're banker 3 and they hire much differently. And essentially what I'm doing here is I'm putting the cross members on right up the wall, and I'm building this from the back to the front, only because I struggled so much with the play on the other set, and these are 3 and they're much higher. I didn't want to struggle with building these, you know. I wanted to make sure, and we're dealing with, you know, 3.2 meters of timbers here, and you'll see in a moment that putting on the fronts of these, I make a mistake, and see if you can spot that mistake. So we just got to put on the last piece here now, and that's all of our cross pieces in. And now I'm coming in with the cross members for the fronts, and this is where I make that mistake. I can't hold it and screw at the same time, so I use a ladder. I come here, screw it, and then reality sets in. So more screws. Reality's just set in. How am I going to get the ladder out? So I take it out and we build up some blocking. And this is where it's handy if you've got 2 people. Like I said, didn't have it all the time, but I was on my own on this particular day. So we just use the blocking, and there's always a way of dealing with things if you're in the garden wanting to do something and you only have one set of hands. You could use clamps, all sorts of things. I just didn't have them to hand at the time. So we just use some blocks to hold up the one end for us. Now I've built them this way on this wall because it allows me to cut the plywood and fit it much easier than it would be, because I wouldn't be able to slide it over like in the other ones. Here I'm measuring to cut out all of the joists, and instead of just doing one, I'm measuring them all and then I'm cutting them out and able to just come in and slot them. And as you can see, even though this is built and it's got no real support yet, they're still pretty strong. I was able to put a ladder on them. Do you like my tea towel around the face? Here I hit the head of the screw that was behind, so we had to slightly move the screw over. And I nearly swore there as well, by the way. Each of these need to be plumb and the shelf needs to be level. So we got 2 spirit levels here, and we're not only checking the shelf, we're checking that the post is plumb. So essentially we've just built these shelves backwards compared to how we did before. It's just leveling off that shelf. And although these shelves aren't even done yet, I'm able to climb on them in a moment just to be able to do this top one. Health and safety personnel need not apply. And you can see how tight it is here because I have a problem with lowering it back down. So it shows that all the cuts were perfect for what we needed. And now it's just a rinse and repeat of the other 3 of these. So again, just making sure they're all level, all the shelves are level, and screwing them in and continuing until we get to the end. And then that's this set of shelving done as well. So, you know, it's good, strong shelving that is going to be made to last. Now on the plant ones, we're going to put some floor lino to help protect against the water. I have that sat in the polytunnel waiting to be used. So we're just putting in the last one. Now we're screwing down all of the boards that we put on, and that's another bank of shelves, and these ones will be used for storage. So this will have all the pots and tubs and feed and everything else that we want to store on them, and they will hold hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Okay, so here you can see me cutting some plaster tape, and I'm using this to hold up insulation. And you might think it's a bit strange causing insulation or putting insulation into this ceiling, but the reason behind it is because I originally felted the ceiling, as you can see, but we still had condensation coming in, and I thought if I ever put heat in this shed like I intend to, then the last thing I want is it condensing even further and dripping back in the shed and causing rot and damage to everything else. So I decided to insulate it. Now this hasn't cost me anything because this insulation and the ply boards that we used inside were all left over from when I built the studio that we started this video in. The studio was built in my garage at home, so we had a lot of materials left over, and this insulation was some of that. So it was no cost to me, it was just spare stuff I had. But as you can see, I'm struggling here. I used the tape to hold it up because this ceiling wasn't built like you would do with having standard centers and things like that. It was, you know, literally just sort of pinned together by the previous owner of this shed about 40 years ago. So and as you've seen all the way through, the build wasn't at its best, so we've had to sort of work with what we had. Now originally I wasn't going to do this ceiling, so this is why you know, why we just felted it initially, and it was going to be left to just that. And I know a lot of you are screaming, why didn't you do, you know, put the board up on the ceiling first? Like I said, this was an afterthought after we had condensation dripping back down. Otherwise we wouldn't have painted, we wouldn't have put the shelving in or anything. We would have just literally put the ceiling up first and then done everything else. It would have been a lot easier, I can tell you. We struggled a lot with this, and getting that insulation to stay up there and what have you while we screwed these boards. We also had to put in filler timbers so that the boards picked up with each other, and it wasn't, because as you can see it's only thin ply that we're using, and we wanted the seams to be tight, you know, so we ended up putting 2x1 fillers in there to pick up the boards right along their length rather than rebuilding a whole roof. But all I can say is this stuff is itchy. It's horrible stuff to work with. If I didn't already have it and money was no option, then obviously I would go for something like Kingspan, the foam board. It would have been much easier. But here you can see it's all literally insulated, it's held up with a tape. It's only temporary, the tape, while we get the boarding up there. And here's it all finished as far as the ceiling done and painted and the shelving in and everything. You know, it's dark at the moment in here, but I have some plans. So there you have it, guys. A massive amount of work, and I think you'll agree that it was worth it, because we turned something that was totally unsafe into something that was really, really good to have on the plot. It's going to be a very useful structure from this point on, and we're going to have lots of videos based around that, because I've got some really good ideas for it. I want to put a massive thank you out to my brother, who came over a couple of days and gave me a hand do the jobs that really needed 2 people to do. It would have, you know, it would have been too much for just one person. Now he has his own YouTube channel, so if you're into anything to do with antiques, check him out. The link will be in the description. His channel's name is Antiques Arena. So this video is completely different to all my others, but if you want to see some of the other projects that we do around the garden, then this is the next video that you guys should watch. I'm Tony O'Neill, and this is Simplified Gardening.